Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for training trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk. I'm the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast, and today I am joined by Will Campbell, who is the director of L&D at JLL. Will works on a global scale to ensure JLL at Google America's learners, leaders, and their teams have what they need to move forward in their careers. He strives to bring consistency, connection, and synergy to the learning landscape. He is passionate about inclusion, connection, and helping others see a brighter way in order to achieve the lives and careers they desire. Will is a gifted facilitator and public speaker, and he is known for being engaging, open, approachable, and versatile. What a combination. I love that, Will. Will, welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast.
Melissa, thanks for having me. I'm ready to have a fun conversation with you and truly connect. Like it said in the intro, that's me. I'm a connector.
Awesome. I love that, Will. Well, why don't you start by just introducing yourself a little bit more, your role, and your company?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing everyone should know about me, I'm actually a career changer. I had this whole other life as an engineer and did that for the better part of a decade before switching to what I do now, which is learning and development. I just love connecting with folks, and that's where I excel. My current role is I lead learning for JLL, which you called out, but specifically one of our major clients, and that's Google. So those JLL employees that work with Google, I'm responsible for their development and make sure they have what they need to move forward, and maybe sneak in a little fun while doing it.
Awesome. We love to see that. You got to have the fun. You got to have the fun. Why don't you talk
For
a little
sure.
bit more about these learners and what some of their challenges are?
Yeah, so the learners are what they cover a wide range within the real estate industry. If you're not familiar with JLL, a way to think of us as an outsourcer. So folks like Google and other clients, Procter and Gamble and Meta and other folks, they have specialties. Most of those specialties are not managing real estate or property. That's where JLL comes in. So when you walk into, in this case, a Google facility, the security, the folks at the reception desk, many times the people serving lunch, the valets, and the folks taking care of the building are JLL employees. Now, you would never know, and that's part of our goal. You shouldn't be able to distinguish us, but there is a difference. And so it's those folks. So those learners, some of those titles I've already given you, but we've got facilities folks. So facility coordinators, assistant facility managers, senior facility managers, engineers. If you think all those people that would be required to take care of a large facility, literally keeping the lights on, keeping it at the right temperature, keeping it clean. Heaven forbid there's a disaster. We're the folks that make sure it gets cleaned up and gets fixed and never happens again. And we partner with our client to look at the future. How are we using the space? How are the Googlers better prepared and better able to have more efficient meetings, to be comfortable, to not have to look for a chair in that spare conference room, those sorts of things.
Wow, that's so fascinating, Will. And I feel like something that all of what you're talking about is something that maybe all of us kind of take for granted, that is all just kind of in place in a working facility, right? And we don't really think about how it all came to be there. So
Uh,
really cool to shed some light on that.
yeah, and 1,000%, and that's the role of JLL. You shouldn't have to think about it entering anybody's spaces, or if it's your space, that's the last thing you want to think about. You want focus on day-to-day business, and then that's where folks partner with us, and we take care of the rest.
That's so cool. Why don't you talk a little bit about what some of the kind of the bigger like workforce development challenges are for dealing with all of these kind of different groups of workers in a
Yeah,
space?
absolutely. I think I'll relay this one to general management.
Mm.
As a manager, as a leader, the challenge isn't the role or the position or the weight of the title. It's the fact that your teams, your followers, your direct reports need something, right? And you have to provide that to them. Now, the trick is that they all need something different at different times, right? That's where things get complicated. So it's the same thing with development from the L&D portion. All of those great folks that I talked about, they need different things at different times. So we have to at times coordinate things by role. Yet there are requirements. Everyone's favorite word in the L&D space, compliance, training that everyone has to take. And working with the client, we get it twofold because our client will have certain requirements in their own training that our folks would have to consume and take in order to be safe and understand that client's culture and operations. But there are also JLL uh, required trainings that folks have to take to meet the exact same objectives. So it's really balancing all of that and making it cohesive. And my goal is to make sure people have what they need to move forward. Um, but the most direct answer to your question, the biggest need is someone will say, how do I develop? What's the next step for me? What's the best path for me? And my response is canned, and it's the same. I'm like, you can do anything you want. I've got that much faith in people. The trick is, what do you want to do? Once you
Yeah.
figure out what you want to do, then we can back into everything else, the development opportunities, the training programs, the mentoring, the courses on our LMS, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's always easy to say, harder to do for folks. It's like, okay, where do I want to go in in my
Oh,
career?
Melissa, I'm convinced this is no secret, but I'm going to share it like it's a secret. Don't tell anyone else. The hardest question that you can ask anyone, what do you want?
Yeah, it's so true.
Period.
True. It's so true. Will, thinking about, depending obviously where people want to go, what they want to do is going to be different for each individual. But
Absolutely.
that being said, no matter how they're going to get there, right now, kind of the skill sets that they're going to need to get there are constantly kind of shifting. How do you kind of help folks stay prepared, to such a changing workforce and make sure that everyone stays adaptable and kind of ready to adjust for the next new technology or the next new thing?
So one of the key things is making sure folks are always aware of where the resources are.
Mm,
One of the biggest things that I face is no matter how much I plan, no matter how much I share an annual plan or a roadmap or the topic of the month or the course of the week or trends, any of that stuff, no one cares until they need it. So it's just point in time, right? I need this topic right now because this happened. Where is it? Oh, I can't find it. Will's a horrible L&D professional, right? And we never ever want anyone to think that. So it's keeping it front of mind for folks. So having that the right links, the right path to the library, reminding folks, hey, these things are all there. So if you do need them, there. And at a minimum, reach out to me directly. There's nothing that I enjoy more than one-on-one interaction and coaching, which is also part of the tool set in my toolkit. Um, so that's fun. So it's really keeping the resources out in front of folks and asking them what they see and what they notice. Probably the second biggest thing that I've learned in the L&D space, it's not about what I want. It's not about what I see. It's not about the topics that I think are important.
mm,
Um, it's about the learner. If I don't deliver the content, the material, the processes, the programs that are needed, it's a big L over here. And again,
Yeah.
you've already picked up. I don't like to take L's. In fact, I don't take L's. Uh, so it's really being connected with those trends, like you said. Right now, you can't. My background is gonna jump out at me right now. You can't swing a dead cat right now without hitting something about AI.
So
So that's one of the things that we talk about. How can you incorporate the use of AI in all those various roles? Which is great. It makes life easier. But back to different people needing different things at different times. Not everyone is going to use AI the same way, depending on their role and their level. So now, how do you target training content in those resources to reach those people when they need them?
yeah.
So I said a lot. So I'm sorry. It's what I do.
No, no, Will, that's great. I love that. And I think, something that really jumped out at me in that response is, making sure that people know where the resources are, like always out in
Mhm.
front with the resources. It's not necessarily about having them consume the resources or what
Right.
resources when you want, like you mentioned, but like when they need it and having them be able to find it. So I think that's super important. And that's so with everything happening too, where there's so much going on. It's like someone might not be using AI yet in their role or need it yet, So it's like, why are they going to consume a bunch of resources on AI, for example?
And that's it. And now here's uh the stress in the system. We've got leadership saying everyone should be using AI. Well, okay, that's a great directive, but implementation is a little different because of exactly what you said. Now
Yeah.
it takes a little bit of diplomacy to give the feedback. Hey, love the directive, but everyone doesn't need it right
Yeah.
now. But when they do, we've got this set up for them.
Right. I actually saw a really great quote the other day that was something along the lines of AI is a tool for workers and it's used best when workers decide or workers like figure out how to use it, like how they need to implement it into their workflow. Because,
It-
and I think that's so true. It's really,
it's huge.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
real quick, I equate AI to sorry to drop name brands to the iPad when the iPad was first released. You didn't get the iPad for a specific reason. You didn't have to. You already had the iPhone and the iMac and all that stuff. But once you had the iPad, you figured out ways to use it. That's where we are with AI now. You don't necessarily need it for a specific reason, but when you use it, you'll find more and more ways to make it part of what you do and to make your job easier and more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good analogy. I love that. Looking at kind of, team assessments, how do you assess and address skills gaps within different departments or within the organization?
And again, another dirty word in the space. Exactly that, assessments. It's so two things that you said that are critical and part of that changing L&D landscape that we talked about earlier. It's all about skills. Yes, you can talk about specific roles, and in my case, there's a ton of roles. But what are the common skills? What are the typical skills that folks need to focus on? Assessing on those skills allows you to provide content and development for folks wherever they are because there's commonalities. Um, and the skills assessments that we have literally do that. And the assessments themselves are important, right? They provide the data. For me, the more important part is now have a conversation with your manager. I
Mm,
assessed myself here, you assessed me there. Is there a gap? What is the gap? And how do we narrow the gap? That's where assessments really have value. But more importantly, that's how people understand where they are. And if people don't understand where they are, it's kind of hard to get where you're going.
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. It's almost like the data point and the like anecdotal discussion around the data point, right? Like
You
you need both.
really need both.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
absolutely need both.
Do you have any kind of core KPIs that you use to measure the effectiveness of your programs, or does it vary for program to program?
It varies from program to program. One of again, I feel like all I'm talking about are the challenges in learning and development, because they've been there forever. It's hard to get core KPIs outside of attendance or the rate this 1 to 5, and would you attend again, and would you invite a colleague to attend? Don't get me wrong, that data is great. Um, but what's really hard to get at is behavior change, which is ultimately where we're looking. That's what we want to get at, because that's proof of efficacy. That's proof of change. That's proof that there truly was an impact. But now overlay that on all the roles that we talked about in the various environments that we talk about, and it's a mountain to climb. However, if you break it down, you can get some really, really valuable data. So yes, again, we use attendance, and we use overall, what you thought of the program and was it useful, but more so, and we're hearing this as a need for our leaders. How do we know the training was effective?
Mhm.
And if we can map, hey, you took Ex- Intro to Excel 101, as a manager, are they using spreadsheets more effectively? Is their work more professional? Are they spending less time doing these routine tasks? And it's those two things combined that will give insight to behavior change or not. Because the other thing that we all know, once you leave a class, once you hang up, once you leave that room, 70% of what you learn is gone immediately. But with that manager interaction saying, I'm seeing this behavior or I'm not, now you're put right back in the mix. Now you're put back into that learning environment, and that learning is made sticky.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that, tying it like to the behavior, like actual behavioral change. Because it's like, sure, people could be super engaged in, like, you have a great teacher talking about like AI or like a very interactive thing doing it. And so it's like people are really engaged in it. But then it's like if they're not using that for the purpose that they were in the course for, then it's still not
We're
still not there.
right.
Yeah.
We're right back at the beginning, and L&D becomes entertainment. Hey,
Right.
I'm bored. Let me take this really cool
Right.
class. Yes, that was a great 45 minutes. Now let me go back to exactly what I was doing before.
Right, right, exactly. Do you have an example of a successful like case study, either an L&D initiative, a mentoring initiative, a coaching initiative that really significantly impacted employee performance that you could speak to?
Oh, absolutely. And this one was more, it had a bigger impact than we initially thought. So a lot of colleagues will deal with role-based training, right? Training specifically for a role, or training specifically to help a role get somewhere. In this case, we targeted our assistant facility managers. So in that long list of facilities jobs that I named off, our AFMs are right in the middle. And part of the feedback that we got is that, hey, our AFMs become a bottleneck. And I'm like, oh, tell me more. What do you mean bottleneck? And the more discussion we had, they become a bottleneck twofold. One, in that role as AFM, if you don't excel, people are stuck with a crummy AFM. But more so, there could be a fabulous facilities coordinator that can't move up because that AFM is there. So that's where bottleneck came from. And so the idea was, what if we created a boot camp, if you will, targeted at AFMs, uh, either giving them or reminding them of all the skills that are required in their role, uh, the expectations for them to deliver, and what it would take for them to move up. What impact would that have? And so we targeted uh, our AFM population, brought them specifically together with content tailored for them, open discussion, obviously engaging and insightful, and all that fun stuff that you want. Um, and what we found was, not only was it a big hit, we saw folks move on in the most positive way, right? Like, yes, this okay. Now I know what I need to do or focus on. Um, as a result, the leaders, so senior leaders, so regional directors and senior FMs, took notes like, wait, there's this buzz with the AFMs, what's going on? And it's like, hey, it's AFM Bootcamp. People are excited to join. We also had FCs or facility coordinators ask, can they take the boot camp? Because they realized it was an opportunity to learn and grow, and it was targeted. And so that was a really, really big surprise. Many times I've found that targeted training or role specific training can fall on deaf ears because people can get defensive, and sometimes L&D can be punitive. You didn't
Mhm.
score high enough on the skills assessment, you didn't do well enough with the client KPIs, so now you have to take this training as a result. But in this case, we found that folks wanted to develop because it was targeted, because they realized that it was going to help them get to where they want to be. And there was this whole community of folks. So the a myth that sometimes folks can think, and this is a people thing, I'm the only person going through this. Woe is me, nobody else understands what I'm going through. But with AFM Bootcamp, you're in a class full of AFMs. Everybody understands what you're going through. Everybody is where you are. You're among friends. It's a safe space. And that really impacted folks. And so now AFM Bootcamp has become uh, a cornerstone, if you will, of development in our process. And in fact, just earlier this morning, I got an email from one of our leaders how we can keep it alive and ingrain it more into what we do.
Wow, that's awesome and so powerful. And I love what you said about like the community aspect of it, because I do think that's super important. And when we feel like we're in a safe place where we're understood, I feel like we can talk about the challenges that we're having and address them because we're being actually honest about it, like all the way honest about what the
It,
problems are. That's awesome.
absolutely. And that little bit of vulnerability goes a long, long way, because chances are, if you've got a question, there's 12 other people on the call in the room that have the exact same question.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's awesome and so powerful. I love that. Will, tell me a little bit about the role that technology plays in your programs. I know you mentioned that you have an LMS, for example, that you're using, of course. But what other tools and programs do you kind of rely on?
So technology is everywhere, and yeah, Captain Obvious statement. But when you work for a technology client who has their own set of technologies and learning platforms and daily operations platform, and you've got a parent company that uses a different set,
Yeah,
technology, it literally is everywhere, and it's how work gets done, whether it's tracking um, inspections that those FCs and AFMs do, whether it's assigning content via that LMS, whether it's a tool to help leaders develop via 360. Things are just made easier by technology. And understanding the right technology for the right application makes my job um, easier and more effective. It's sort of like a power booster, right? What I bring to the table, my experience is great, but when you bolt on technology, scope increases, reach increases, efficacy increases, um, and I'm just overall more effective. But of course, people tend not to talk about the downsides of technology, right? If you can't get in the meeting room, if you don't have the right link, if you don't have the right passcode, if you don't know where the resources are, then it can work against you. But that's on the lower end. That's more minimized than anything, but it's there.
yeah, for sure, for sure. How do you balance, just kind of extending that question, how do you balance using, so many different sets of technology where, especially with Google, you have their set, you have JLL set, and then I'm sure there's all kinds of technology like infrastructure within the buildings and things like that. So I'm sure it's endless, like with juggling all kinds of different platforms and such.
It is. It really is. For me, the balance it's twofold. I'm going to lead with one primary. Ultimately, we deal with people. And how do you reach people? How do you communicate with people without technology? you call, you have an in-person meeting, you get the topics out. So that's the ultimate fallback, right? Is to truly connect with people agnostic of the technology. Then the other part is, and I think this is directly related to AI, having a solid use case for that specific piece of technology. Like any tool in a regular toolbox, it's the right tool for the right job. You won't use a wrench if you need to put in a screw. It's like, but it's a tool, but
Yeah.
it's the wrong one, and trying to do that makes your job that much harder. It's also sharing that, right? Yes, that technology is great. It will do this, but that's not your application. That's not what I hear.
Oh,
And again, back to that first point that I made, at the heart, it's people.
yeah.
L&D professionals have to be experts at needs analysis. If
Hmm.
you don't understand the need, you'll never ever get to the solution, regardless of the technology that's available to you. And so for me, that's the balance.
Yeah.
Understanding the need, do a great in-depth needs analysis, and then back into everything else.
Right. 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 And finding the technology from there. Yes, that makes complete sense.
Bingo.
Will, thinking about just kind of the L&D space over the past 5 years, what are some key takeaways you've seen? And, to follow that up on the flip side of that, what do you see coming? And what is something that maybe is going to carry through? Just speak to that a little bit.
So I think a couple things. One of the golden threads in everything that I've said, uh, there's still this element of personalization. Um, long gone are the days of one size fits all. I think most people will agree with that. But in the L&D space, it's absolutely true. One size does not fit all. One size fits one, and you have to have that perspective and that mindset when creating programs or tools. Um, how do we make it individual? Because that's going to have more of an impact. Something that's individual. So that's been a change, and we will see more of it coming. Another change, and my age again will jump out. When I was in high school, we were in a social studies class, and the teacher said, "Oh, you know, at some point we're going to have jobs that don't exist yet." Now, back then, I'm like, "Well, that's kind of silly. That like you couldn't even wrap your head around that." We're there.
Yeah.
People have jobs that didn't exist 5 years ago, didn't exist 10 years ago, weren't even thought of 20 years ago. So, how in that environment do you keep up as an L&D professional? And more so, how do you keep your stakeholders up? How do you keep your companies up with the new roles? Because new roles require and come with new skills that may necessitate new technology. How do they integrate with the old ones? And it becomes this really amazing game of chess.
Mhm.
So we're going to be playing a lot more chess
Yeah.
in the coming years because we're going to have to integrate all of this stuff, these roles that don't exist yet. um, what do you do with that? So I think we'll see that.
I
Um,
love that.
and I think the last thing that I've seen and what I see coming and what's changed, it's all in one category. Um, there's a rise still of push versus pull.
Mm.
It used to be, let me push out this training. Let me push out the ethics training. Let me push out the anti-harassment training. Oh, okay, we're covering that liability. We're mitigating that risk. We're done. To now, hey, how do I develop here? I want to do this, but I'm over here. Um, Again, back to that personalization, but people are letting you know what they want. Oh, but that doesn't exactly fit here. Can I do something external? Then now you're really being challenged because you have to understand what you have available internally. What's different about the external resource? Do you now need to balance that with spending that money? How do you figure that out? So it's forcing the industry or the function to truly understand what we offer, And I'll say it another way. Truly, what's the L&D value proposition? Because if you don't understand that, people now pulling, you got to give them some guardrails. You got to set those boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that push and pull kind of analogy because I think that's so applicable and like speaks to, yes, people need to like what is about why are we still like doing these programs and like we need to be working closely with our learners constantly to make sure that it is delivering value. And that's the only way to kind of understand if it is, I think, in my opinion, anyway, is like ask them.
And that's it. And not only ask them, but listen to the responses.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I should always stress that because that doesn't necessarily always go without saying. Well, to close on a positive note, what is the most important lesson that you've learned on your journey that you would pass on to someone just starting out on theirs?
So this one, I love that you ask this. It's something that I take to heart and share with anyone that'll listen. Um, I'm not the most important person in the room. I'm not the most important person on the call. I'm not the most important person on the email chain. Once I realized that,
Mm,
my role, my life, my purpose became so crystal clear. So if I'm not the most important person, although I control the PowerPoint or the Google slide, it's the learner, it's the end user. If you don't connect with them and understand what the need is and deliver on that need, what are you doing? Like nothing else, literally nothing else matters if you don't fill that gap.
I love that. I think that's really good advice for anyone, especially in this role, to understand that truly and because it's a lot of people get like caught up, in just like the nuances or their job description, or I have to do this, or these are my responsibilities. I have to do that. And they miss taking a step back and be like, but like, what is the bigger picture of how I'm actually doing that? And so I think
And
that's phenomenal advice.
you summed that up brilliantly, Melissa. That's completely spot on.
Yeah.
And the illusion is real. In my world, I control the technology. I can share my screen. I cannot share. I can chat. I cannot chat. I cannot let you chat.
Yeah.
All of those things. Or I'm in front of the room.
Yeah.
Same thing. I've got the clicker. I can move on. I've got all the power, but it's not about me.
Right. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Well, Will, thank you so much for joining us today on the NovoEDTalks podcast. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
Right back at you. Thank you for the invitation. I'll throw it out right now. Happy to come back if there's an opportunity. This was such a fun conversation. Thank you, and NovoEd for doing what you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Will. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our listeners for listening to another episode of NovoEDTalks.